Good afternoon. This is the April 24, 2023 meeting of the Commission on Disability here in Westport. My name is Brian Gallagher. I am the chairman. We are still waiting for a couple people to arrive, but we're going to get started and have a discussion at least. In terms of remote participation, there's nobody there will be no one participating remotely today. So it will just be those of us who were here. The next thing we have on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the March meeting, but we would need a quorum for that. So we'll wait and hopefully one of the other members will arrive. I did receive a call, an email rather, from Paula at Town Hall, and she said it is time for some people to renew, at least to send in a letter of intent saying they want to continue to participate. And I looked at the dates that I have, and I was mistaken about one of them, but the only person that we have that needs to renew participation on our commission is Sue. So I have to remind her.
Okay.
I think the last ones to do it were Ray and myself.
I think I did it last year, the year before, maybe.
Yeah, some people, let me just check my notes. Some people are due for renewing their participation in 2024, and that would be you, Martin,
Oh, okay.
Kim, and I guess you, Rick.
Okay.
Hey, Susie Q!
Sorry, I'm late.
No,
okay.
no.
Raymond and I will be up in June of 2025.
Nice to see you.
So we all have some time except Sue. You know what I'm talking about is I received an email from Paul at Town Hall saying that at least one person on our commission needs to send a letter of intent saying they want to participate, continue to participate.
Oh, okay.
And I looked at my notes and I said, none of us. And of course I had the date for you wrong. So she said, Paula told me that she has you being up for renewal if you want to continue to participate in June of this year.
Oh, okay.
You just have to send her a letter of intent, and
I
then
can do that.
you might have to go through that whole process again.
Not a problem.
Take the ethics test and go over and get sworn in and get your
If you'll continue to have me, I'd
Certificate.
love to continue to
Yeah,
serve.
get your frameable certificate so that you can put it on your office
Yes,
wall.
I know. I love that.
Can we vote on whether we want Sue to be on the committee or not? I say yes.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
And one of the nice things that happened that came out of that remote Zoom meeting that I participated in was it had a list of the organizations that support the new bill, and our name was right
Oh,
there.
nice. Very nice. This is that
we
power
sent-
chair bill? Yeah.
We sent a letter in support of it.
Great.
So now that we have 4 people, we can do the minutes, approval of the minutes of the March meeting. Did everybody receive the minutes that I sent around?
Yes, yes.
About a month ago?
Mm-hmm.
Were there any changes or suggestions to be made?
No.
All right. We have a motion to approve the minutes.
Yeah, so moved.
Any
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes have been approved. And Sue, before you came in, I mentioned that, and maybe I said it while you were, Anders and Ray will not be joining us. Anders is having apparently some more medical stuff,
Yeah.
and Ray is also having some medical
Oh,
stuff
boy,
today.
that's too bad.
Yeah. The next thing on the agenda is there's a bill pending in the Massachusetts legislature about power wheelchair warranties. I participated in a Zoom meeting the other day with several people from disability organizations like the Disability Consortium and the Massachusetts Office on Disability. People were there talking about the new bill and saying that the new bill will provide for and when the next hearing might be. The next hearing hopefully will be in July. They would like to see as many people in power wheelchairs as possible at Beacon Hill for the legislative hearing to speak in favor of the new bill. Unfortunately, you're only allotted 3 minutes to speak if you do show up, and hopefully the room will be packed with people, and by the time you jostle your way around and get in, it could be a long meeting. And I was just mentioning to Martin and Rick before you arrived, so is that for me to get from my house in Westport up to Beacon Hill in Boston, and navigating your way through Boston, finding a place to park for, and then trying to struggle into a packed hearing room for the opportunity to speak for 3 minutes is not something that I'm going to be able to endure.
Of course.
But everybody has the option to send a written something in support of it. So, and I will hopefully cover as much as I can accurately. The new bill will extend the warranty protection from 1 year to 2 years, which would have helped me because I was just like a month beyond the warranty period on my wheelchair when it just absolutely died. It just, unfortunately, happened to be the day of my son's wedding, so I had to struggle getting outside to attend it and then the reception. And that's one of the things I said is when you prepare something in writing, indicate how the problem with the wheelchair has affected you personally. So the bill would extend the warranty bill from 1 year to 2 years. There were some questions from people like, well, I have a 10-year-old wheelchair, I have a 20-year-old wheelchair. Is there any warranty protection for me? Well, there's not, in the sense that there will be no obligation to come and fix it, but some of the other portions of the bill might be helpful. And one of the things was once you call and tell them you have a problem, the company that you're dealing with is supposed to give you a response within a day or two. And then once they give you that response, they only have a limited period of time to make the appointment to come out and look at the wheelchair. The companies are also supposed to have a stockpile of parts. Now in my case, it was the controller. Everything else worked fine. But the controller stopped, so it wouldn't move forward, backwards, side to side, up, down, whatever. And when I called, they said, well, we have to, number one, we have to get the approval from your insurance company, and that took a long time. And then we have to make an appointment, and that took a long time. You have to get the part, and that took a long time. And I had to pay out of pocket for the part for a significant percentage of it, and the part wasn't stockpiled, so that took a while to come in, and then they had to get me on the books. And the real problem that I had was that there were not enough technicians working for the company. So, and the one young man that came to our house, who was lovely, did a great job, he covers the entire state, essentially.
Wow.
So it's very difficult, but hopefully this bill would help with some of those things.
Brian, how long were you without your wheelchair, your power wheelchair?
At least 2 months.
Wow.
Fortunately, I didn't have to get doctor's appointments, so we try to schedule them all together,
Right,
6
right.
months apart.
That's crazy.
And I wasn't going out for any other reason because it was.
So the only other thing to do right now, and that's only if you've got the money, is to either buy yourself a second power wheelchair, which would be crazy, right? I mean, it'd be crazy expensive, or stockpile your own parts so that you could have a friend fix it or something. I mean, it's
Well,
just
that's
silly.
one of the people on the Zoom meeting says, look, I can fix a lot of things on my own chair. but he didn't have the parts.
Right, right, right.
And took a long time to get them. One of the things that the new bill also provides for is reimbursement to the wheelchair user for out-of-pocket costs.
Good.
If you have to pay for some of the parts, you have to pay for some of the labor. The out-of-pocket expenses, you can apply to have them reimbursed. The provider that you're dealing with, the manufacturer of the company, in my case, I was dealing with New Motion, and the people I dealt with on the sale to me were great. But then I ran into all the other problems. The company you're dealing with is supposed to offer you a loaner
Yeah,
Mm.
that's what I was gonna ask.
within a couple days,
Right.
and that never happened in my case.
Wow. It was not offered, or you just never got it?
It was never offered.
Wow.
So, under the new bill, the company has to offer
Good.
you, and they have to have the parts. It doesn't say anything about, having to have a sufficient number of technicians to cover the
Right,
state of
right,
Massachusetts, but at least,
And Brian, part of the problem is there's only, what, one or two companies that do the repairs? Is that true?
Well, there's like 3 major wheelchair companies in the New England area.
There is, yeah.
Yeah, there's New Motion, National Seating and Mobility, and Hudson. But Hudson is not really working down here at all.
Right,
They
they-
kind of do
On the certain, yeah.
northern Massachusetts, New
Wow.
Hampshire, Vermont.
So now you're down to
So
2.
We're down to like, yeah,
and as I said, I was dealing with New Motion. And when I talked to the young man, who I said was a really good and quality guy, he said they just couldn't find people
Yeah.
to come work for them.
techs are hard to find, and they, like any other entry-level job, they're not paid super well. They have a lot of demands on them, because there's only 2 companies, an incoming of phone calls and having to
Right.
manage. And oftentimes, people are not as gracious
Right,
as Brian is, and
Right.
they kind of don't get treated well. So there's often a quick turnover in techs, in wheelchair techs. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
There's never enough of them, never.
Wow. I can't
And
imagine.
they're always,
I mean,
like
this
you
is-
call and like, hey, I need to talk to Jose. Jose no longer works here. Oh, okay, so who's my new tech? I'm in Dartmouth. Oh, your tech will be Brian. And I'll be like, okay, can I leave a message for Brian? And then you call back, 3 weeks later and say, hey, Brian was working on something for Martin Costa for me. Oh, Brian's no longer with the company.
Wow. That's
Or
so
Brian
frustrating.
forgot, Brian as in, I have no paperwork on it, and it's in Brian's clipboard in Brian's truck, because he goes to 40 of them. He probably showed up at 8 o'clock at night on
Right.
Saturday, or,
Right.
Very harried and apologetic.
Yeah, they're usually great guys. They're nice people, and not
Yeah.
guys, but, nice
Yeah,
people.
but you're right. I can just imagine walking into somebody's house who had such a difficult time dealing with
Mhm.
the company.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, the face of the company shows
Right.
up.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's a tough situation. That might be something we as a board might want to consider.
What's that?
I don't know. I just feel like, could we have a loaner in town? Could we have
Wow.
if we have enough money, could we purchase a loaner
Wow, not a bad idea.
and keep a loaner?
What do you think? What's the pros and cons of that, Brian? What do you think? I mean, is there a certain size chair that would only work for certain people, or?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
You know what I'm trying to
They're all
say?
customed, but
Yeah,
in
but
a
it must be a
pinch.
standard, yeah.
could
Right.
could we get a transport chair even? Or, I don't know. I don't know if I'm just speaking off the top of my
Yeah,
head,
but
but
it's
I'm
not,
thinking,
it's a good idea.
you know.
The problem is, like, how do you get it to the person that's the 400-pound chair or whatever?
Yeah.
They have to have a van, or
They-
somebody has to pick it up
Right,
and
and then
bring it
there's
somewhere.
liability. I mean, it's probably not realistic that we do that, but
Yeah,
as a
but
board, if we've got money, do we store a couple of,
parts,
I don't know, controllers, or, there's common things that go on chairs.
I agree with you. I think we should think outside of the box. I mean, I'm not gonna worry about the liability part, just to stop us from doing something like that, because this is a safety issue. Somebody's life could be at stake if they need to get out of the house quickly. If there was a fire or something, and you're trying to put the person in a manual wheelchair because the damn power wheelchair isn't around. Come on, this is crazy.
Yeah. And frequently, the Council on Aging will have a manual chair
True.
that they can loan you for a period of time. Or you can go and buy yourself a transport chair, which is again manual chair. But if somebody needs a power chair, because some of these people they use it as a mode of transportation to get
Sure.
from place to place,
Sure.
and they don't have the ability to wheel themselves.
I was gonna say that. As a
A long way.
quadriplegic, that's difficult to do, is it not? To wheel yourself in a manual chair? Yeah.
Yeah,
it
many
can be.
quads can't,
Right?
because they just don't have the control. And, I mean, obviously, we couldn't have, a tilt and space or a sit and puff or a
Right.
head controls for everything. But, I just wonder, there are groups on Facebook.
That's right.
There are Rehab Mod, Adaptive Mall that sell used equipment. Even if we didn't have obviously we couldn't have everything, but a couple of things, I don't know. Or at least a resource.
I think you're right.
if we
I've
had
seen
to
those
find
chairs, a lot of times are for sale on Facebook, a used power chair.
Mhm.
And if we made the case that this was gonna be used, for charity, maybe we could get it for free or cheaper, who knows?
Yeah,
But,
but then, there are as many problems associated with it as good things that will come from it.
Like what?
Liability issues.
I think it would be a liability issue if we put somebody in a power chair that didn't fit them right, and then they got a breakdown, or they got,
Yeah,
Could-
and storage, where would it be stored? And
No, I know that, yeah.
so, certainly something to think about.
I mean, liability, we could have them sign a waiver. I'm not a legal person, right? We could find out about that, but the storage part and the moving it around, I can see being a difficulty, but.
No,
I mean, this would be once in a blue moon, probably, that somebody might need it, but that would be really important when they do need it, as you know.
but yeah. But even if we had some type of coordination with Council on Aging to know what they have, what they have in storage. If they have
Yeah.
if they have transport chairs, or they have a manual with elevating leg rests or something, then if we hear of somebody in the community that has a need, we at least can maybe put them together.
Speaking of that might be something for us to consider when we're looking for ways to spend our
Absolutely.
money.
Right.
Maybe we could buy a couple chairs
Right, that's what I was just thinking.
for
Could
our
we,
Council on Aging, or even manual chairs or
right,
transport chairs. But the times that I have called the Council on Aging in the past and asked them if they need anything, the answer is no, because people donate so many things.
Mm-hmm.
My experience, because my mom lived in Dartmouth, is that the Dartmouth Council on Aging has a lot more things because they have
yeah, they have a nice setup. They have a very robust senior center and a very robust trade and use program. They've got a lot of,
Oh, yeah?
but they've got a building. They've got a good-sized building. Although our guys have a good-sized building too.
yeah. It's another thing that we'll talk about is down the road, what's the town going to do with the high school, and if and the plan is to upgrade the buildings, upgrade the Council on Aging building, or build new buildings. It will include the Council on Aging functions. So
Yeah, at that
Well,
point, they might be
it's
space.
true. You may have storage space right there, for example, as far as
Right.
storage.
Right.
But transporting it, I suppose you could talk with Council on Aging. I don't think they'd be happy to
not-
transport, but.
But not really, because if you're in a power chair,
Mhm.
you've got a way to transport your own power chair.
True.
So it's not like
That's a
we're
good point.
taking somebody who doesn't have a power chair.
Right.
I mean, you have an accessible something that you have,
Right.
it's a van or a truck or a car or something.
Yeah.
Right.
And unless you're new to a power
Correct. You
system,
might not have that. Yeah.
you've got something.
Yeah.
yeah, initially before we purchased the van, we were calling the Council on Aging because they have a very large van
Mhm.
Yes,
that has the lift.
the lift on it, sure.
And you make appointments, and they will pick you up and drive you, and frequently they would just wait, because my doctor's appointments sometimes wouldn't be more than 15 or 30 minutes. And then they would just wait for me in the parking lot.
Yeah, it's a good service, very nice. My mother uses it, yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
Well,
But
I
you're
think,
right.
I think it's doable. I think we should consider it and keep it in mind and just keep our eyes open for anything used and, you know, talk it up a little bit, maybe with some folks from the Council on Aging or whatever. I just don't think it's insurmountable.
Well, I think keep track of the legislation too, because if it goes through and the manufacturers are then required to keep the spare parts.
Right.
True.
Then we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, it'll
True.
eliminate some of that.
Right.
And one of the things they were careful about was not being too far-reaching in terms of things that they wanted to include in the bill, because they were concerned it wouldn't get passed.
Mhm.
They want a bill that will get passed, and maybe down the road, tweak it again.
Right,
Mhm.
and extend it out from 2 years to 5 years or something like that, 3 years.
Right.
It is sad when your warranty on your refrigerator is longer than your warranty on your
Yeah, yeah.
power chair, you know?
Yeah,
And you can buy an extended warranty, right?
right, you can't do that for the wheelchair, right.
Another
Sad.
thing that the new bill is supposed to do is hold providers to a reasonable timeline for evaluations in emergency situations. Like in my case, my wheelchair breaks, I can't get outside, I can't do anything. How long is it gonna take for you to get here?
Right,
And evaluate my problem?
right.
And sometimes they do it via Zoom
Mhm,
or via FaceTime.
mhm.
And you know, and that would have been fine with me, because I could just hold up my phone and say, look,
Right.
it doesn't move.
Right,
It's fully charged, and what do you think's the problem?
right.
And then in a reasonable time for them to come out and fix it. And if
But
they
then you might
had,
have the problem, don't you have the problem, that, as we often have with cars and so forth, that you bring that, they come down for that chair, but they don't have the parts with them, now they gotta order a special part, right? Now you gotta wait another month or whatever.
Right.
And if it's older chairs
True,
that are no longer like a car or anything else, it's older
Right.
chairs.
Hard to
and
get
they're
that
not
part.
always adaptable and,
and some of the people were talking about the problems that they have had. A lot of things on power chairs will last, like my power chair has hard rubber tires so that the tires don't go flat.
right,
Mhm,
And the motor in them doesn't usually go bad.
mhm,
It might after 10 years,
mhm.
but the brushes inside the motor
Mhm.
sometimes go bad. And those are the things you can't really diagnose by holding your phone
Right.
up to it.
Right,
But in my case, it's the controller. And it's not unusual for controllers to go bad.
Right.
And of course, if once they see the stuff, they could easily say, you need a new controller, let's get you on the books.
Right.
For
unplug that one, let me see what the prongs that
Right,
plug into it
right.
are. We might have to go with a different controller, but,
Yeah, and the one
and
that,
that's what we might be able to help with, is keeping a couple of head switches, a couple of controllers. They come in only a few different plugs. The
configurations,
5
yeah.
prongs or 7 prongs or the star one or
Right.
whatever, and there's not a whole lot.
right. And
That, not your regular joystick, but it could be something that you could use.
yeah, the replacement part that I got was not the same as
Right.
the original part.
Right.
It works the same.
But it works.
Right. So,
Okay.
and then we talked about the loaner chairs, and, if a loaner chair had been available, it takes them an hour to get it to me, and I would have been okay.
Mhm.
That's another thing that hopefully the new bill will have in it, and it will pass. We'll have to keep an eye on it. As I said, it might be July before it comes up for a hearing.
Mm.
And then another thing in the bill would have authorization for the Attorney General to intervene when necessary.
Hmm.
Oh, after a week or a month, I was pretty upset. You know, I kept checking the website, calling it, but I wasn't ready to call the Attorney General at that point. And what was the Attorney General going to do for me? And frequently getting lawyers involved just protracts the
Yeah.
problem.
It's true.
And, you know, one of the things that lawyers, like defense lawyers, used to do is love to protract things because it meant more money for them.
Mhm.
And I say that because I used to be a defense lawyer. Every morning I'd wake up and I'd say, well, thankfully people are out there suing because I will defend cases and I'll put my kids through college.
Right.
Now, as I said, they talked a little bit about the testimony, and when you get up there, you have 3 minutes, so they said, look, let's talk about how you should put your thoughts in order, practicing before you get there, so you're not stumbling around. And they were also going to spend some time on this call to go through the specifics about, if you're going to write one, what you need to write about. And of course, they didn't get to that, but there's supposed to be a following email with that information. But one of the things they stressed was, if you have a power chair that breaks and you're going to give testimony, whether it be in person or in written form, you need to stress how the breakdown of your chair really affected you. Like my case, I could have missed my son's wedding, and I had, fortunately, I had a strong person there to help muscle me around over the grass in my manual chair. But if you really need that chair to get from point A to point B, do your shopping, or get your groceries done, or other things, you really need to mention that. So if you're going to write something, if you're going to show up, make sure that you have basically an impact statement.
Very important.
Yeah.
Concise and to the point.
I will certainly mention this to, we obviously have patients that are in power chairs at my
Good,
office, so
good.
I'll mention it along.
The next thing that I want to talk about is something that's near and dear to Martin's heart, are the Geo grids.
Yay!
Yeah. And thank you for being so involved in that, Martin, and
Yep.
for sending the picture around to everybody.
My pleasure. I'm glad to see it finally get done.
Yeah.
'Cause
2
they're
years. It's
good.
been a couple of years, hasn't it now?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Remember I took a drive down to Jersey to pick up this?
Yeah.
I thought I would have them in that summer.
Yeah.
And years later, we finally get them in. But yes, everybody got the picture? It was
Yep.
pretty cool to see that truck sit on top of the
Yeah.
sand without
Seems
sinking
like
in.
it's
It was
good,
great. Yeah, it was. I was very impressed by it. I walked with my canes. The canes didn't sink into the ground. Somebody in a wheelchair who pulls a car up there now can get, if they're alone, can get their own wheelchair out, wheel from that section to the mobile
How,
map
how
area.
close could you get on the grids? How close could you get to the mobility
Oh,
mats?
the grids go right up to where the road begins, which is before where the mobile mats are. But my point is they're both the same solid surface, so it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's
so-
not like the grid stop and then it gets sandy and then,
Right.
it's the grid stop, the size of, basically the size of a car, a good sized car or a pickup truck. And then the hard packed road begins there and then you can go up the Moby map.
And of course, with the storms being what they are in our area, sand frequently accumulates
Yeah.
on the parking area and on the road, and sometimes it can be hard to get down.
Well,
even
this will be a
the
test
road.
year. You know what I mean? To see whether we need to have Chris go down there in the middle of the summer, or, if we had a storm that brought all that sand on there and get it out of there, or whether we can just do it once a year.
Yeah, and we also have to make sure that mobility mats are down.
Yeah.
And
We still have that little bit of an issue. There's not that great entryway between the gigantic rock
Mhm.
before you get to the beach as you go up the Moby mat and then kind of go to the right. The sand is
How
really.
big of a step is it to get from the road up onto the beach?
Yeah.
Because, when I was walking with my forearm crutches, I could manage that. I could stop and lift my leg and,
Yeah.
and make the step. But if I'm in my power chair and I'm up against something that's the height of a curb, it's gonna be a problem.
Yeah, you're right. Right now, it's at least, whatever, a foot.
Yeah,
But there's a section, I don't know what happened, there's a section of fencing as you go toward the handicap parking signs that somebody yanked out. I don't know, you know what I'm saying? It looks like it's been torn off somehow. So I don't know whether when they go to fix that, they'll do it right, put the moving mats in that section. Don't have to go to where that little trail was, because now you have this opening. I don't know what Chris is gonna do about that. I think he's gonna fix that up. I mean, to me, that would be easy because that is more level with the ground, so just go on the moving mat that way. I'll have to talk to Ross about that.
yeah.
I gotta talk to him about something, we'll talk about it, I mean, it has to do with us as well, the all access trail.
Mhm.
I'll talk to you about that in a section, but my point is, when I return my call and talk to Ross, I'll bring this up about where's the moving mat gonna be placed, and perhaps, he can put it in that other section, that's open now,
Yeah,
or else they're gonna have to, I don't know how they get permission to get the sand on a slower
Yeah.
incline. Now you're getting in trouble with conservation and everything else, right?
yeah, there's the conservation, the land trust, the town, all kind of come together in
Yes.
that area. And everybody's gotta be involved.
Mhm.
But I was there at one point before the GeoGrids went down with Chris Capone and with Sean Leach, and they all agreed that the Moby mats can still make it in between the rock and the grass.
Great.
It's started to grow, but it's not much. It's only about that much, I don't know. I think some of it's gonna kind of go off on the grass just a little bit, but they felt that it could be put in there. We may have to reevaluate next year, because that may be
Yeah.
even closed up even more. So I don't know. But I'll talk to Russ about that.
Okay.
Anyway, I think it was a great success. Chris and his little crew, I say little because, right, there's only 3 or 4 guys. It's amazing what they can do, and they get it all done. It looks great. Looks very natural. You can't see the grids, but we'll see what happens. I don't know if the grids, we'll see them if the sand gets blown off of it, but more than likely the sand will be more on top of it than off of it,
The next issue is North Beach or Baby Beach. We want to make sure that the mats go down and the beach, the committee gets a table there with the wheelchair accessible.
That's my next project, to get them to get that table there. Sean keeps saying they've got it, they're gonna get it. They should be there anytime, but it's never there, so I'll ask him about that as well. Can I make a comment on that? I stopped by there just to take a look at it. Where the movie mats normally go, again, we had that big storm in the winter and it's kind of washed that out. It's a little bit of a gully. Not as bad as original. Original was probably about a foot deep. So that's I talked to Sean and I talked to Chris Gonzalez about it, putting some stone there. They said that was okay, so that if the water comes back up with another storm, we're not gonna be going through this all the time, because we keep putting the sand back.
Right.
You're just gonna go,
Washes out.
right, washing out, having the same problem over and over. But it looks, besides that, it looks the beach looks in good shape, and the parking lot's in great shape, and if we can get the stone down or some stone and then some moving mats on top of that, I think we'll be all set. And the picnic table.
We won't have the same issue with the Land Conservation Trust because they don't own that land. But what about the Conservation Commission? Will they have any issue with us?
According to Sean, no,
Okay.
and he's on beach committee, so I would think that's
So
okay.
that is a lovely area over
Mhm.
It
there.
is.
It's really nice to get down there too. And with moving the handicap signs, put the handicap parking signs down towards
Yes,
the water.
yes, that was a good idea.
As well as the top, was a great idea.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
it was
you
a
for it.
great idea. Don't
Well, I
think
was
it
at
was
the
your
day-
idea, I just said it was a great idea.
No, I'm taking credit for it, so. Chris was at it, and I did mention it to him. I think he already had that in his mind, but I said, boy, remember there was one handicap parking spot, and it was near the road, near the
Right.
asphalt road.
Right.
What's the point of that? I said, do you think we can move these down there? And then he
That
added
was-
2 more, which is great, so
That
there's
was an
3 of them.
able-bodied person decision
Yeah, is that interesting,
to
huh?
put it
Yeah,
up near the road where
yeah,
Right.
just to give them,
they would think that's where it would, should
fulfill the
be.
requirement.
No,
but-
no, I think,
right?
I
Huh?
would think that you would think that it would be the first parking spot in the
Oh,
lot would be where
okay.
it should go,
Yeah, yeah,
not thinking
Yeah.
about where the most desirable
yeah,
spot would be.
yeah, yeah.
And of course, that old handicap spot was a great source of revenue for our commission, because
Everybody and their brother wanted that one, right?
Yeah.
True.
Next thing that I put on the agenda was ideas for the ADA transition team. We still haven't met formally. The members of our commission who were on the ADA transition team were myself, Anders, and Martin. And Martin and I have talked about this Zoom program that was set up, I think, to talk about setting up a transition plan for people in towns that didn't have one, more than what do you do to update one. Because in our case, the town has a really completed a transition plan, and some of the things have been done, but now if we have changes coming in our town and everything's going to be put into a different building or up into the old high school, then at that point our ADA transition team is going to have to meet and talk about potential new changes that will have to be made. Because the old high school might not be as accessible as we want it to be, or if you're just going to refurbish the buildings that we have, do changes have to be made? Right now, this building that we're in is handicapped accessible. It has a ramp. It has an automatic door. The town hall has the elevator, which has been there for a while now. I have not actually been at the Council on Aging building other than to sit in the car while things are being dropped off for them.
They have automatic door openers. It's
And
accessible,
yeah.
very accessible.
Yep.
Okay. So, it may be not much needs to be done if
Yeah.
we're just gonna stay in the buildings that we're in, but unless the plan is to update the buildings that we're in somehow.
The old high school has, I don't know if they're still working, but had electric door openers, and it's got a chair. And does it have a ramp on that side? It doesn't have a ramp to get into the main part of the building because the entrance at the cafeteria / auditorium is ground level. And then you can go around the corner to get to the main.
I believe there is a ramp.
Is there
Yeah,
now a ramp
yeah.
at the front door?
Yeah,
Oh, good.
I walk or ride that
Okay.
parking lot
couldn't remember
often,
if
you know, I
there's
mean,
a-
but
yeah.
it's, you almost don't see it because it's fits in so
on the
nicely
side,
there.
okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
But it has electric doors.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
That's good.
The electric door in this building, every time I used to try to come in here, the button would work, but every time I touched it, I would get this really big shock.
Wow.
Oh,
That's,
It was a painful shock. And today, when I tried to use it, I couldn't reach with my elbow, so my lovely wife used her elbow so that we weren't shocked. Now, she's mentioned it several times to people around, and I don't know if it's been fixed or not, but it's quite a surprise. You muscle your way up the
I used
ramp
it this
and-
when I came in. I didn't get shocked, but I don't know if it's intermittent.
Well, that's probably 'cause
Try it on the way out.
You're more special.
Maybe it's my sneakers,
Rick will
Brian.
try it.
There you go.
Grounded me.
The other opportunity to encourage involvement would be from our last meeting with the push for sidewalks in Central Village again, and see if that could spur some
Well,
activity.
and that was one of the things that, we tried to think about. Was, after our last meeting, was the discussion about creating that
Mm.
pedestrian-friendly zone with a sidewalk that runs basically from the old Marguerite's up to Hicksbridge Road. There's gotta be some curb cuts, the sidewalk has to be manageable, and that could be part of the discussion as well, as you said. But will that plan come to fruition
Yeah,
at
you
any point
wonder.
in the future? It's gonna be a price associated with that, and although the Diamond School override did pass,
Mhm.
the next round of voting for override is gonna be
Be tough.
Gonna be a
coming
tough
up
one.
soon.
Yeah.
And finding money in for things above and beyond what's necessary just to keep the town moving forward, it might not be an easy thing to do.
Mhm.
Does anybody have any other thoughts, questions,
I do.
concerns?
I just wanted to bring up that at one of our meetings a few months ago, we had discussed the inequity of healthcare
Yes.
for people in chairs. And I just wanted to update. I brought that to a coffee with the CEO
Oh, cool.
in March. And we had a pretty lengthy discussion about that. And since then, South Coast has started a new committee that is looking at equity of people with disabilities of all types and ages and
Wonderful.
age groups. So I unfortunately did not get chosen to sit on that committee.
Oh.
However, I do know two people on the committee.
Oh.
So they are meeting for the first time next week, I believe. Maybe the end of this week or starting next week. So I can be able to bring in some updates as I hear them from the South Coast.
Wonderful.
But Dr. Kruger did, hear me, listen. We discussed things about wheelchair access, having high-low mats in primary care offices so that we could, people could transfer to a low mat so that they could be seen not in their chair. We talked about lifts. And we talked about bariatric patients, which is another disability barrier, and having that, he was a former bariatric surgeon
Oh.
for South Coast that started the bariatric program in
Oh.
South Coast, so got in some roll-on scales or walk-on scales that were wider with grab bars. So we talked about, potential of getting those. He also encouraged me that if anyone wanted to speak to me individually about their personal experience, and he would be happy to sit down with people or sit down with me to address specifics if it was a certain primary care's office that we needed to talk
That's
to.
wonderful.
So he was pretty open. Tanya
Yeah.
Johnson, who's the EVP of, she's the COO now, I think, of hospital operations, was also at the meeting and she is heading this diversity group and disability equity group, so.
That's great to hear. Great to hear.
We'd also like to see, going forward, some of the doctor's offices are now only welcoming to people with disabilities, but what I have found is in some of the older buildings, the doors are narrow, the rooms are small.
Yeah.
You go to the newer buildings, like I went to the dermatology building up on Route
Oh, yeah?
177.
Yeah.
Brand new building. The examining room was large, the
Mhm.
door was wide.
Yep.
And it was a much different experience
Yeah.
than trying to struggle
Right.
into, if I get into a small room and I've got the big power chair,
Yeah, it's hard to turn around.
and
It's hard
it
to
is,
move.
it's hard to turn
Yeah.
around. And unfortunately, one day my wife was behind me and my wheelchair doesn't have a backup camera, and I squished her. And
Yeah,
she was not
right.
happy with me, yeah.
Wow.
So,
It's scary.
no,
It's,
it's a learning experience. Now she learns to stay out of the room when I go in. But-
Well, I can only speak for South Coast, but I think they heard, they listened,
Mhm.
and.
I'm not sure I understand.
Sorry.
Hey,
My watch
give-
just started to talk to me.
Yeah, mine does that sometimes
Yeah, my
too.
watch was listening.
Out of the blue,
Siri's
right?
listening.
I know.
How come your watch has a male voice and not a female?
No, you can change it to anything you want.
So change it to a woman with a nice Irish lilt to her voice.
So the woman I thought sounded not so
Not so pleasant.
pleasant.
Yeah,
I thought
okay.
she had a little bit of an attitude on her.
Yeah.
So I switched to the
To
man,
man.
and I like him much better. He
You can tell
listens-
them what to do.
He listens nice. He listens to me much better. She would she could never understand me. I can't understand you, and I get sick of her attitude. So.
Men are much more open to hearing things and
That must
talking
be
about
Wow.
it.
Wow.
sharing their emotions.
Yeah,
Send,
yeah, we're-
yeah, send my husband your way.
we're
Maybe
great at that.
You must have missed that class. So.
Yeah.
Poor Frank. He's a good guy. Just easy.
That's great, so, great. I'm glad to hear
Yeah.
that they're open to it.
Yeah.
It's not often that you have somebody who's receptive to
Mm.
Yeah.
what other people have to say, and at least offering to address some of the issues.
Yeah, and, and I have to say, I'm working on some projects for South Coast, and in our space planning meetings, the architect that we're working with has, repeatedly, he's talking to rehab people, so he doesn't have to do that as much, but I can hear in how he speaks to us about, now remember, you need to have enough space, because you can have people in chairs and they're gonna have people with them and behind
Nice.
them or around them, so you're gonna make sure you have some space. So, he's kind of preaching to the choir when he's talking about rehab. We're like, yeah, we get that covered. But it was nice to hear him saying those things, because when he's sitting and talking to an ear, nose, and throat doc
Mhm.
about planning their space, they may not be thinking about that.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was really great to hear him say, make sure we're putting in bathrooms that they can, there was called POS. I was like, what's a POS bathroom? Person of size. And
Hmm.
he's like, you just gotta make sure you have bathrooms that are big enough that, in your case, it may not be necessarily a person of size, although it may be, but it might be somebody in a power chair or somebody in some other type of device that needs to have enough room to spin around. And so it's great that the architects at least are thinking in those ways. So.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm sure they have a class on ADA requirements.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, but it was just nice, the way he was doing it. It wasn't like, we have to do this.
Right,
we have.
right. You really
It
wanted
was,
to
don't
accommodate.
forget, I want to make sure you have enough of this. I want to make
Mm.
sure you've built this into your thoughts. And so.
the term POS is usually used to describe some of the cars that I used to own.
Yes, and not a person of size. Yes,
No.
it was kind of an interesting. We had we used to have these things at the hospital called cows.
Mm.
COWs, computers on wheels. And we had to change them to WOWs,
Yeah.
because somebody would say, it came up that there was someone looking for a cow, a computer on wheels, and said, is the cow in that room?
Oh, my
And
God.
the patient overheard
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
thinking they were talking about their size.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was,
Wow,
so
how about
we
that, huh?
changed all of
Yeah, I
that,
can see
and
that being a problem.
within a heartbeat, we no longer call them cows, and we call them WOWs,
Speaking
Wow.
of cow,
workstations on wheels.
Martin's organization, Clean Our Westport.
I
had a
know,
very
our cows.
successful-
We got a couple of people on the committee that's not crazy about Team Cow, the name. I like it because, the whole
I
idea,
kinda like
the whole idea was because of
It
cows
plays
in
on
Westport, right? That was the,
Yeah.
but they said, well, what does that really have to do with litter and whatever, but,
I like it.
I can see how people feel about the term cow, but, let's have some
Fun.
fun with it and,
Mhm.
I think I still use it all the time when I'm right to someone, say, thank you for being part of Team Cow.
and-
Pretty nifty.
My wife was very happy to see the email saying, oops, I forgot to mention, we are actually meeting twice a year, because the last.
Oh,
one
yeah,
that
Cindy
came out
sent
said,
that out ahead of time. She forgot to put,
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we're gonna do it again the fall,
Fall,
sure.
yeah.
The fall tends to be a little bit smaller, less people, but still, we get a lot done. Hey, we filled up a 40-yard dumpster. We normally have a 20 yard that the town allows us. This year, Wind Waste donated a 40 and it got filled. It's wonderful, but it's horrible to say that, you know?
Yeah.
That's much
Yeah.
trash is around that we have
It's
to.
great that you collect it, it's sad that you have to.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, so. But thank you for mentioning it, Brian.
Does anybody else have anything that they would like to add to?
I do. Is this, are we at the section of the part of any new business kind of stuff? Is that what-
Yeah, we're talking about
I-
thoughts and concerns.
I've got my agenda, but it's last month's. Yeah, I just realized it. Anyway, what I wanted to ask was, what's going on with the Lee's coupons? Is anybody collecting those?
Oh, Kim and I have been in charge of collecting those.
Oh, good.
I brought in some, it was the winter, was the last ones I collected.
Did you go
And
to
then- but-
the Woolen place? Because I dropped off my donation there.
I picked them up, Kim picked them up there, I think.
Okay.
I picked them up here, and then Brian had given me some. I picked them up, where, was it here? We were at the
Town hall,
selectmen's
mailbox, I
meeting,
think,
yeah. We were at the selectmen's room that day, and then
Where
I
do you
picked
think the
them.
best place to drop them off is? Because the Woolens, I felt a little bad because they had it really shoved underneath some clothes and you couldn't even see it. So I'm afraid it's gonna get lost there. I mean, can we just give it to you?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
That's
you can,
fine.
instead of dropping
Yeah,
off,
I
so
don't
when I
care.
see you or
we
something? or-
collect them, and
Okay.
then, we went to Lee's, and they gave me the form, and I
Oh, yeah?
filled it all
Oh,
out.
good.
And dropped it back off
Good, good.
at Lee's. That was a while ago,
Okay.
like, November.
So I mean, there was only 2 or 3 locations that were collecting, no? It was the Country Woolens, it was Town Hall?
In town hall, yeah.
Those are the only two I knew of.
Okay,
And last month I brought a whole stack of them to give to you, and
And I didn't
I
come.
missed you.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Work gets hard
Oh,
to
yeah.
jump
Okay.
out
we
sometimes.
know that, we know that.
But you won't blame me if I throw you under the bus when my wife yells at me, right?
Yeah,
Go right
it was
ahead.
Sue's fault.
All Sue's fault, all day.
Okay.
I can take it. I got big shoulders. I'm good.
There you go. Yeah,
If there's nothing more,
I think that was it.
our next meeting is May 22nd, 2023, right here in the annex.
Okay, I heard that loud and clear. May 22nd. Here, annex, okay,
And then we are done for the day.
okay.
I have a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, me too, aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much,